If you think family is the fairest place on earth, then my story will make you think again. I still remember my parents' eyes as they looked at me on that stage that day. Bewildered, regretful, and terrified of losing something they had never cherished. They paid every penny of my sister's tuition without a second thought. And me. I wasn't worth a cent to them. At least not until they realized that the useless girl had become a source of pride they didn't deserve. This is the story of me, Emily Carter, the second daughter in a middle-class family in Ohio, USA. I was born 3 years after my sister Sophia. If you asked any neighbor back then, they would praise Sophia with glowing words. Smart, beautiful, well-behaved, the golden girl of the Carter family. I used to believe that too. The little girl sitting in the corner of the yard, hugging an old comic book, always thought her sister was truly wonderful, and that I was just an extra no one cared about. My family wasn't rich by any means, but my parents were always willing to spend all their savings to send Sophia to the best private school in the area. Grandma once whispered to me, "You have to understand, your parents put all their hopes on your sister. It's a worthy investment." I didn't know whether to feel sad or happy. When I was little, I simply believed that as long as the family was happy, everything was fine. But the older I got, the more I realized what unfairness truly meant. I did better in school than Sophia. I won science competitions, I devoured books until I fell asleep, while Sophia just needed to smile sweetly for everyone to melt. When I showed Dad my first-place state math award, he just nodded absent-mindedly and then turned to ask Sophia if she wanted a new dress. I got used to my achievements being unworthy of remembrance. And so, I grew up in my sister's shadow. In everyone's eyes, Sophia was an angel, and I was the faded shadow no one bothered to ask about. Only Grandma truly understood me. She would slip me a few dollars for old books and softly say, "Just keep studying, and one day you'll make people hold their heads high to look at you." When I was 15, a small incident made me feel deeply how life is never fair. Sophia wanted to attend a summer course in New York, which was very expensive. My parents didn't hesitate. They borrowed money from friends and bought her plane tickets immediately. And me. I asked for an old laptop to do homework and learn programming, but Mom just said, "Well, the school library has computers, just walk there and use them." And I did. Every winter night, I'd huddle in my thin sweater and stay in the library until the security guard made me leave. I didn't hate my parents. I didn't blame Sophia either. She never saw me as a rival. She just enjoyed the favor that had always been hers. I kept studying hard, doing odd jobs, mowing neighbors' lawns, babysitting on weekends to have money to buy books. Those small amounts of money were more precious to me than any gift. They gave me hope that I could stand on my own 2 feet, even if no one was willing to support me. At school I wasn't as dazzling as Sophia, but teachers liked me. They knew I had nothing but a hunger to learn. Mr. Thomas, my physics teacher, once said, "Emily, you weren't born to be hidden behind anyone. You can be anything you want to be." I clung to those words like a charm through high school. Then came college selection day. Sophia got into an Ivy League school, and the family threw a party, inviting relatives and friends to celebrate. I also got accepted to a prestigious technical college in state, knowing I couldn't dream big because of our finances. I gently asked my parents for some tuition support, just a part so I could focus on studying instead of working too much. But their answer shut down every last bit of hope I had. "Sophia needs money to settle in the big city. You're close to home, figure it out yourself. We can't afford both at once." That night, I lay staring at the ceiling, tears soaking my pillow. I promised myself, if my parents wouldn't pay a cent for me, then I would pay 10 times that for myself. And on the day I wore my cap and gown and stepped onto that graduation stage, I would force them to open their eyes and see what their invisible daughter had accomplished. The next morning, after hearing Mom's cold words, I still got up early as usual, quietly made breakfast for the whole family, then hurried off to my morning shift at the bakery. Whenever Sophia came home for the holidays, I was the one making tea, washing dishes, while she lounged on the couch scrolling through her phone or video calling friends. I used to think maybe if I were even more obedient, even better, my parents would change how they treated me. But the harder I tried, the more I realized. All my efforts were just a breeze passing through, leaving no trace in their hearts. When I was in elementary school, I had a tiny dream: to have my own bicycle so I wouldn't have to walk over 3 kilometers to school. Sophia got a new bike, then an electric bike, then a used car in high school. Mom said, "Your sister's old bike still works, just use it for now. If it breaks, just walk, no big deal." I treated that bike like treasure, pumping the tires myself, replacing the rusty brake cables myself. I never asked anyone for help because I knew what's mine, only I would value it. Sophia always stood out. She had beautiful clothes, dressed up like a princess. I wore her old hand-me-downs, as long as they weren't torn. Once, I secretly saved up from washing dishes for 3 weeks to buy a new dress for the spring festival at school. The day after I got it, Sophia found it and borrowed it for a party with her friends, then spilled red wine on it and ruined it. Mom just said, "Oh, it's just a silly dress, don't make it hard on your sister. You can wear old clothes anyway." I could only smile bitterly and toss the ruined dress in the trash. Every weekend when the family gathered for dinner, every story revolved around Sophia. Sophia won an art scholarship, Sophia was acting in a play, Sophia was going to a summer camp in Europe. And me. If I mentioned winning a chemistry or computer science award, Dad would wave his hand dismissively. "Girls don't need to excel in those dry subjects. Be like your sister, study art. It's easier to find a decent husband." I bit my lip and swallowed all my resentment. I knew demanding fairness in this house would only hurt me more. But I still quietly gathered precious things for myself. I read books whenever I could. On the bus, while waiting for customers at the bakery, even learning extra coding skills from free videos at night. I kept a small world for myself where I wasn't Sophia's shadow, not the forgotten daughter. In that world I was Emily, unique and irreplaceable. Relatives I didn't see often, like Aunt Rose or Uncle Tom, my mother's younger brother, sometimes looked at me and asked, "Emily, what do you want to study when you grow up?" I always answered without hesitation, "I want to be a software engineer." Uncle Tom would smile encouragingly. "Good for you, girls nowadays should be independent. Keep it up." But those words of encouragement were never strong enough to change how my parents saw me. They never believed I could do anything big, because they had long boxed me in as the ordinary little sister. Sophia never intentionally tried to hurt me. In truth, she was simply the one who benefited from such obvious favoritism. I remember once she sat next to me in my room, casually saying, "Emily, don't be upset with Mom and Dad. They just want you to have an easier life, while I have to carry more responsibility, so of course they favor me more." I smiled, nodded, and said nothing. I knew perfectly well. The responsibility Sophia talked about was a burden I never even had a chance to share. When Sophia graduated high school, my parents threw a big party. A 3-tiered cake. Guests packed the house. Even the neighbors were invited to celebrate. I wore an old dress, hid behind the kitchen counter, and washed greasy plates and dishes. I saw Sophia beaming as she posed for pictures with our parents. That photo was later framed and hung in the living room, like a monument of glory that I never had a place in. I didn't resent them. I just quietly carved it all deep in my heart, like a debt I had to pay back myself. I promised myself, one day when I step onto that stage in my graduation gown, I won't need anyone to clap. Their eyes, the eyes of those who once ignored me, will be the loudest applause of my life. In my senior year of high school, my parents were already preparing everything for Sophia to go to college. They sold the old car, borrowed more money from friends, and even withdrew a savings account they once promised to keep for my education. I found out but stayed silent. That night, I sat on the roof, staring at the starry sky, and promised myself, I won't let my dream be crushed by this injustice. One day they would have to look at me differently. And I would show them. The girl they once looked down on would become the most precious thing they ever lost. I started looking for scholarships as early as my junior year. After classes, I worked at a bakery, and at night I sat in front of the old laptop Uncle Tom gave me, the only gift I ever received from extended family. I tirelessly researched every scholarship, every university that offered aid for students from low-income backgrounds. While Sophia was busy shopping for new luggage and designer clothes to start at an expensive Ivy League school, I was calculating tuition, dorm costs, and meal plans down to the last dollar. In the end, I chose a reputable technical university right here in the state, the University of Ohio, where I knew I had the ability to succeed and could work part-time if I needed to. I didn't dream of studying in a big city like Sophia. I just needed a place to make my dream come true, close enough to come home on weekends to take care of Grandma when she was sick. The day I got my acceptance letter with a partial scholarship, I just stood there in my room, clutching that paper so tightly my hands trembled. I didn't tell my parents right away. I was afraid to hear their usual indifferent comments. "Oh, that's nice. Do your best." But in the end, I still had to tell them. After all, for the remaining tuition, I still needed their help. That evening, I sat down at the dinner table while Sophia and my parents were talking about buying her a new car for college. I took a deep breath and said, "I got my acceptance letter too. The University of Ohio gave me a 50% scholarship. I just need you to help with the rest, about $10,000 a year." The kitchen fell silent. Sophia looked up at me, smiled lightly, a little surprised. "Oh, congrats. You're really smart." Mom just picked more food for Sophia, without even looking at me. $10,000 a year. We still have to take care of Sophia. Where would we get money for you two? Froze. Dad just took a sip of tea, looked me straight in the eyes and said flatly, "Emily, you're healthy and smart. You can take care of yourself, right? We can't afford 2 kids at once. Sophia needs to be settled first. You're strong, don't make us worry more." Just a few short sentences crushed every last bit of hope I had left. Sophia seemed like she wanted to say something but just lowered her head. I forced a smile. "Okay. Understand." The day I got the email saying I'd been awarded, I actually cried for the first time in years. I picked up my phone, almost called my parents, but I stopped myself just in time. What for? Would they be happy? Or just nod and turn to praise how beautiful and talented Sophia was? Well, this joy was mine alone. I'd keep it for myself, for that little girl who once cried herself to sleep when her college dream was crushed. From junior year on, I no longer owed tuition. The full scholarship covered everything, and my internship paid me a salary. I moved to a bigger software company, working on real client projects. Every month, I sent a small amount back to Aunt Rose so she could buy medicine for Grandma. I didn't call my parents. I wanted to keep my world free of injustice and hurtful comparisons. My friends started to admire me. Professors called me the golden girl of the computer science department. I knew I wasn't the best, but I knew I was the toughest. 4 years of college were about to close, and I had my graduation speech ready. In it, I didn't mention my family once. I would only speak about standing up on my own, about a dream no one could crush if I held it tightly enough. When I sent the graduation invitations to my parents, I was fully prepared. Their faces would go pale, their hearts would ache. And when I stood on that stage to get my degree, I would hold my head high, the way I had walked through every shadow alone. Graduation day finally came. An early summer morning, soft sunlight blanketing the wide campus of the University of Ohio. I woke up early to get my gown, cap, and the short speech my advisor had approved. In the mirror, I saw my face thinner than 4 years ago, but my eyes were brighter than ever. The dorm that day buzzed with laughter and congratulations. Liana, my roommate, hugged me tight and pressed a bouquet of white lilies into my hands. "Emily, my mom said I had to give you these flowers. She says you're strong and beautiful, and you deserve every good thing." I almost cried, but I held it back. Today, I wouldn't shed another tear. Around 10 a.m., I heard a car pull up in the yard. I looked down from the balcony and saw my parents step out, dressed in their best clothes. Sophia was there too, just back from New York, still as beautiful and elegant as ever in shiny high heels. They looked up and met my eyes. 1 second of awkwardness. 1 second of realizing it was me, the daughter they once thought would never make it far. I went down and smiled politely. Sophia hugged me first and whispered, "Congratulations, Emily. You're much better than I ever thought." I just smiled back. "Thank you, Sophia." My parents stood there awkwardly, unsure what to say. My mom glanced around and asked, trying to fill the silence. "So many people. Did you handle everything by yourself?" He nodded. "Yes. I've handled everything by myself these past 4 years." That answer made her face pale slightly. Dad cleared his throat and changed the subject. "So, your speech was chosen. I heard a lot of students competed for that." I calmly adjusted my cap. "Yes. I'll speak in front of the whole school, the professors, and thousands of students." Sophia turned to look at them, making sure they heard every word. Nobody said anything else. But I knew their hearts had changed, even if they would never admit it. The ceremony began. Hundreds of students lined up in order. I stood at the front, clutching my speech. When the MC called my name, the entire hall erupted in applause. I stepped up on the high wooden stage, adjusted the microphone, and lifted my head to look at the audience. I saw my parents and Sophia sitting right in the front row, their faces tense, listening closely. I started my speech with my own story. No embellishments, no blame, just the truth. I once thought my dream was small. I believed that if no one gave me a chance, I would never fly far. But I was wrong. The only thing I needed was to believe in myself. Even if you grow up in doubt, scarcity, or favoritism, as long as you stay determined, you will reach your goal. I saw my mother lower her head, her lips trembling. Dad clenched his hands, unable to meet my gaze. Sophia cried, for the first time, not over heartbreak or to get her way, but for me. I ended my speech with a thank you. Thank you to the hardships that made me strong. Thank you to myself for never giving up. And thank you to everyone for listening to me today. Thunderous applause filled the hall. I bowed and stepped off the stage with a weight lifted off my heart. I didn't look at them. I didn't need their pity or belated praise. My honors degree was the most beautiful answer I could give myself. After the ceremony, everyone gathered for photos, flowers, and signing yearbooks. I stood among the friends who had been with me, the professors who had guided me, and the parents who now looked at me differently. They no longer saw me as the daughter abandoned by her family. They saw me as living proof that not everyone needs privilege to succeed. Sophia came over and hugged me, her mascara smudged with tears. "Please forgive Mom and Dad. They really regret it now." I gently squeezed her shoulder and said softly, "I'm not angry. I just don't need that anymore. I'm strong enough to walk on my own now." My mother came closer, reaching out for my hand, but I stepped back. I kept my voice calm. "Thank you for coming today. But I'm not the same Emily from 4 years ago. You don't have to worry about me anymore." Her eyes welled up. Dad just stayed silent, biting his lip. They knew they had lost the chance to stand beside me in my brightest years. They knew they were wrong, but that regret came too late to change me. When the ceremony ended, I left the campus under the blazing May sunshine. I held my diploma tightly and didn't look back. They would return to that familiar house and continue talking about Sophia and their flashy pride. As for me, I would begin a new path where I would never again be compared, suppressed, or robbed of anything. And from that moment on, I knew I had won. I walked away from the campus as a completely different girl from the one who once boarded that bus 4 years ago. Back then, I had only a torn backpack, a few old clothes, a heart full of wounds, and a pride trampled without mercy. Today, I carried an honors degree, a resume strong enough to compete with anyone, and above all, a rock-solid belief that no one could ever dim my light again. I rented a small room near the tech district in Columbus, where I had just received an official job offer from a major software company. This company had once been a distant dream on the nights I coded in that cafe filled with the smell of pastries, yet now they had chosen me. I bought myself my first suit, high heels, and a decent laptop bag. On my first day at work, I sat in a large meeting room with seasoned senior developers. When I stood up to present my idea to improve a module, my voice didn't tremble like it did in my first-class presentation. I spoke clearly, confidently, and took responsibility for every proposal. When the meeting ended, the team lead patted my shoulder. Good job, Emily. I've never seen an intern this confident before. I just smiled. He didn't know how many sleepless nights and silent tears hid behind that confidence. I used to tremble when my parents scolded me. Used to be terrified thinking I couldn't survive in this cold city. But I overcame it all. So what could ever make me back down again? For the first 3 months, I threw myself into work like a moth to a flame. I coded late into the night, tested bugs tirelessly, learned new frameworks during my lunch breaks. I knew I had to be faster, better to get into the official development team. And then results came sooner than I thought. After just 4 months, I was offered a full-time position with a salary 3 times higher than my old cafe job. I no longer worried about every penny for meals, rent, or utilities. I even started sending a small savings amount regularly to Aunt Rose so she could take better care of Grandma. During that time, Sophia texted me many times. She said our parents now often talked about me in front of relatives, saying, "Emily is so talented. Emily is strong," as if they had always been proud of me. Sophia invited me home for Thanksgiving. I read the message, put down my phone, and kept debugging the tangled lines of code in front of me. I wasn't ready to go back to that house yet. At least not now, when my scars hadn't fully healed. On weekends, I spent time learning project management skills. I attended workshops for women tech leaders. I knew I couldn't just be a good coder. I wanted to go further, become a team leader, then a project manager, and then, why not a CTO? I was no longer afraid to dream. I had learned how to turn dreams into concrete plans. Then turn plans into daily actions. My first winter working full-time, I rewarded myself with a used car. No more standing shivering at the bus stop in the snow. In the morning I played jazz, drove to work, sometimes stopping to buy myself an expensive coffee, a luxury I used to only smell but never dare to buy. One day my boss called me into his office. He invited me to join a big project with a client in Silicon Valley. This was a breakthrough opportunity for anyone wanting to make a leap. Took me exactly 3 seconds to say yes. The project lasted 6 months and brought me to California. The childhood dream when I watched TV with Sophia. I got to work with top engineers, attend million-dollar pitching sessions, listen to young founders talk about technologies that would change the world. My heart raced like the first days I touched that old library laptop. I knew this was my world. After the project, I returned to Columbus with a new salary, a new position, project lead. In my first team meeting, I stood on the podium, looking at the new developers just like I once was 4 years ago. Nervous, curious, eager to be recognized. I smiled and started my sharing session. I started just like you all. If I could do it, so can you. Just be patient and never believe you're less than anyone else. That night, I sat alone in my small but cozy apartment. I put my laptop aside, made a cup of hot tea, and watched the snow fall outside the window. I thought about graduation day, about my parents' pale faces, about Sophia, my sister who now called me by an affectionate name she never used back then, my little but strongest Emily. I knew I had come far enough not to fear old injustices anymore. I had turned them into a springboard, so from here on I had only one thing left to do. Keep flying higher, freer. In the second spring after I became project lead, I got an unexpected call from Sophia. Her voice was slightly choked. "Emily, can you come home for a bit? Mom's old illness has come back, and Dad's gotten much weaker. They want to see you." I was silent. 4 years of living on my own, then 2 years immersed in work. I had built an invisible wall around myself to never be hurt by the past again. But hearing Sophia's voice, I knew it was time to go back, not to appease them, but to close the unfinished things for myself. I took 3 days off, drove over 300 miles back to the small town I'd left at 18. Early spring was still cold with some leftover snow. The old house was still the same, red brick walls, roof tiles darkened by time. I stepped onto the porch, took a deep breath, and knocked on the door. Mom opened the door. She was much thinner, her hair almost entirely gray. Seeing me, she froze, her lips trembled. Then she burst into tears like a child. I stood still, letting her hug my shoulders tightly. I didn't cry. My tears had dried up years ago, I just felt my heart light as air. Sophia ran out, hugging me from behind. The three of us stood on the doorstep, while my father sat in the living room, his old frame sunken into the worn armchair. Seeing me, he tried to stand up but couldn't, just looked at me with eyes full of regret. I sat down next to him, placing my hand over his time-wrinkled one. "Dad, don't stand up. Home now." He burst into tears. The man who was once strict, patriarchal, who once coldly said I didn't deserve anything, now looked so pitifully weak. That day, the whole family sat together for a simple meal. Mom kept putting food on my plate, apologizing with every bite. "I was wrong, Emily. I didn't know. I didn't understand how much you suffered. Now I know how amazing you are." Sophia held my hand under the table, gently tapping it as if asking me not to mind. I looked at Mom, at Dad, then spoke slowly, my voice as calm as possible. "I didn't come back to blame you. Came back to say I'm okay. I forgive you not because you deserve it but because I want peace for myself." They cried. That meal had more tears than laughter, but it lifted the weight that had pressed on my chest for so many years. I stayed for one night, sleeping in my old room. I ran my hand over the old study desk, the wall once covered in sticky notes, the faint pencil marks still visible. I lay down, listening to the spring breeze creak through the wooden window frame, my heart no longer afraid. The next morning I woke up early. Mom made breakfast, Dad sat silently sipping tea, and Sophia bustled around packing my suitcase. Before I walked out the door, Mom hugged me one last time, her thin arms still warm like they were when I was little. "Next time stay longer, okay? Now we just wish for you to be healthy and happy." I nodded, gently but firmly. "I'll come back, but I have my own life. Please don't worry about me anymore." Sophia walked me to my car. She didn't shed tears like she did at my graduation. She smiled, her eyes filled with pride. "You changed everything, Emily. You did what no one in this family thought you could do. I'm truly grateful to you." I laughed, pressed my forehead to hers like when we were kids. I didn't do it for gratitude. I did it for myself. I drove off down the old roads. The cornfields were sprouting bright green shoots, and the sky was strangely high and blue. I felt my heart at ease, light, as if someone had finally lifted the invisible backpack that had weighed on my shoulders all my youth. I knew from now on I could come back to that house anytime. A strong Emily, free Emily, Emily who no longer had to be compared or fight for the love she should have received unconditionally. And no matter how much they regretted it, I didn't need it anymore. Because I already had everything. Pride, independence, a brilliant career, and most importantly, I had myself whole and full of love. From Emily's story, we can clearly see that sometimes injustice and lack of love in a family can break us, but it can also become a powerful drive for us to rise above it. Emily proved that as long as you persevere and believe in your own worth, no one has the right to decide your life but you. The greatest success is not to make others regret, but to live freely, happily, and authentically, as the person you want to be. What do you think about Emily's story and how she overcame injustice to take charge of her own life? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful family stories.